Welcome to today's Daily Dose of Nature webinar. Today's topic is turning snapshots into artwork. And I shall be presenting your webinar today. My name is Aditya Panda, and I have been leading NatHab trips in India since 2016. As you all know, I lead the tiger trips, as we call them in India, which are the Grand India Wildlife Adventure, India Tiger Quest, and India Tiger Safari, which is a Photo Pro expedition. When I'm not leading expeditions, I work for conservation of elephant and tiger landscapes in my part of India, which is Eastern Central India, which is where I'm based. And that's how my year usually is. I spend a part of the year on expedition, leading fabulous trips for NatHab, and the rest of the time working for conservation. So over to today's topic. You see, today's topic is, well, I can call it slightly deep. That's usually a word I reserve for conservation topics and not photography ones. But today's topic will lead into, it'll delve deep into the art side of photography. We usually have webinars that talk about the technical side of photography. We talk about equipment and techniques and post-processing and so on. But today I'm going to talk to you about something that I myself am trying to learn and evolve into. You see, as a photographer and as a naturalist, I consider myself a lifelong student. One never stops learning. One is constantly growing and evolving. And it's the same for photography. Photography is an art form, and all of us, those of us who take our photography seriously, try to get better and better at it, and try to become amazing visual artists. That is usually the goal of every photographer. In today's day and age, there is what you could call an oversupply of good wildlife photographs, all over. There are so many people that have access to not just excellent gear, but also the access to travel to the remotest parts of the world, looking for fantastic wildlife and being able to photograph it. I myself have personally struggled with this question. When I have thousands of other people traveling to the same places, seeing the same animals, and taking pictures that are almost identical, what do I do as a photographer to try and stand out from the crowd? How do I create images that look different? And that is the question that we are going to dive deep into on today's webinar. When one talks about standing out from the crowd, when I decided to present this webinar, and I tried to put that in one sentence, that's when I came up with the title of today's webinar: how do you turn snapshots into artwork? All of us have cameras these days on us. We all carry a cell phone. Even children have a camera. And humanity has been taken over with this obsessive, you could call it a pandemic of photography, in a way that has never been seen in the past. We stop and take pictures of everything and everyone around us. We take selfies all the time. Um, and even those of us who have cameras tend to do that sort of mechanically, especially when we are on holiday or when we are traveling to amazing places on the kind of expeditions that NatHab organizes. And what we basically try and do is take snapshots of our trip, snapshots of our memories. There lies the difference between what you could call documentary photography, which is photography that intends to document things, and art. All of us, especially wildlife photographers, all of us, no matter how much we intend to or aim to produce fine artwork, all of us as naturalists tend to be documentary photographers as well. We try and take pictures of everything we see around us. We try to take pictures of interesting natural history moments, interesting wildlife behavior, a rare bird, a rare animal, and not all of that can necessarily always be stunning artwork, that compels the viewer. You see, something I've been struggling to deal with myself, especially on my social media feed for a while now, is those of you who probably follow me on Instagram and places like that might have noticed that I haven't been posting in a while. And there's a reason behind that. The reason is that, I at one point learned that, my pictures, most of my pictures, tend to look like everybody else's pictures. And as a photographer, I'm now trying to sort of rewire myself to shoot differently. And also, I've been trying to figure out how to exhibit my pictures in a way that the best of my work is shown, and it doesn't get lost in that crowd of thousands of tiger pictures or other wildlife pictures that you see every day. And if you would want to define quality photography of that sort as fine art photography, and you wanted to put that in one sentence, that would probably be summed best as photography that has compelling content that pulls the viewer in. It has really great composition that makes the picture stand out from the crowd and makes even an everyday subject look, interesting, stunning, phenomenal. And it uses light very beautifully. It really uses light to, give the picture a particular feel. Maybe you could call it a magical feel, or an aura of some sort, but it needs to add feel to the image. Again, when you try and define fine art photography, that discussion could go really, really deep, because it comes down to that question of what is art. And that again is a really deep question with very, very long and probably several different kinds of answers. But let's just say that when we talk about fine art photography, we are talking about the photographer being an artist with a vision, and using the camera as his or her tool. And when you do that sort of photography with wildlife, that's fine art wildlife photography. A great fine art picture has three key elements. Number one, it has to be visually appealing, with an aesthetic draw. Of course, it needs to be technically sound. You can't have a picture where you can, you have stunning content and beautiful light, but the picture is blurred because the shutter speed was too low, or the camera shook, or wasn't mounted on a tripod, or or say the light is overexposed too much or underexposed too much. So it needs to be technically sound, and it has to have some sort of conceptual engagement that a larger idea. I don't know if I just made it easier to understand the concept of fine art photography, or more difficult by defining these three key elements. But hopefully, as we go ahead with the webinar, you will find it easier to grasp this subject, and probably have a list of a few key things that you can keep in mind the next time you go out with your camera and try and get pictures that are of a level higher than what you are shooting today. So if there could be a playbook for fine art photography, fine art wildlife photography, I have listed a few points that I'll be going through ahead, and you can note them down if you want to. Of course, there's going to be a replay of this webinar that you can check on our website later. But here's the playbook that I have managed to put together. The first sort of rule or guideline, whatever you might want to call it, of trying to take fine art wildlife images is to go away from the idea of taking pictures and start thinking about making pictures. Now, I don't know how that sounds, but to make it simpler and easier to understand, let's talk about documentary photography, where you have a camera with you, there are things happening around you, and you are just taking records of whatever is going on around you. You pick up your camera, you point it at a subject, and you take a picture. It might be technically sound. Your camera might have a great lens. It might be shooting 20 or 30 or 50 or 100 frames a second, and you are capturing action, and everything is technically sound. The light is good. All of that is fine. But there isn't much thought going behind those pictures. That is documentary photography. That is what you would call taking a picture. Now, when it comes to making a picture, you have to be, it sort of calls for a gradual paradigm shift in the way in which you approach your photography, in the way in which you approach your subject. Number one is to have a vision in mind. What am I trying to photograph? More importantly, what am I trying to show? What do I want to exhibit to my audience or my viewers after I have taken this photograph? That key difference in mindset can create a lot of positive results. A lot of us, before we take a picture, are trying to think of what do we want to shoot, instead of thinking what do we want to produce, what do we want to show. Do I just want to show an animal? Do I want to show an animal in its habitat? Do I want to show a particular kind of behavior? Do I want to show the animal in a certain way? Am I shooting a little butterfly where I want its colors to stand out, where I want its markings to stand out, or am I shooting an elephant or a lion or a tiger or a whale, where I want the animal's grandeur, the animal's majesty, the animal's size, the animal's imposing presence in a certain landscape to come across in my pictures. With every different subject, all kinds of animals and birds and insects, uh, there are different ways that um, one could show them in their images. And if you sit down and think about it, you will be able to have what is called a vision in mind that you can try and communicate through your picture. The second thing to keep in mind is to develop a style, a signature style. If you follow any famous photographers, any good photographers, award-winning photographers whose work you like, you will see that they each have developed their own signature style. If you look at their pictures enough, you can look at a picture without a watermark and tell if it is from one of these photographers that you follow. I know it would have been much easier if I could have shown some photos from some famous photographers on this webinar, but I did not want to do that because that could raise copyright issues and so on. So what I've done is that at the end of my slide presentation, I have listed a few photographers whose work I follow quite closely, and you could look them up and look at their websites and their pictures, and try and see what I'm trying to mean. The next point is to decide what kind of photos you want to produce. There are two general schools in photography and also in other kinds of visual arts. These are called realism and pictorialism. All of you might have heard of I'm sure all of you have heard of the famous American photographer Ansel Adams. Ansel Adams was typically what you would call a realist. He showed his pictures were arty. Yes, they were fine art. Yes, they used light beautifully. They used composition beautifully, but they were extremely realistic. They showed their subjects as they should be, and as they are. They did not try to, his work did not try to manipulate the picture to look like something it was not. Which is something that's going to be easier to understand as soon as I explain to you what pictorialism is. Pictorialism is the opposite of realism. Pictorialism in photography refers to the attempt at producing photographs that look like paintings. Photographs which are ethereal, which they're photographs in their essence, but what they show, the subject matter, is not necessarily shown in its natural form or like what it should appear to the naked eye. It is manipulated to be art of a different kind. It's not necessarily honest to the actual sight. So today, with the advent of Photoshop and so many other image processing softwares, a lot of photographers like to play around with, they more than just process their pictures, they actually manipulate their pictures to make it look a certain way, which is also fine as long as one is honest about it. Both of these schools of photography can produce art. I personally prefer realism because I am not only showcasing the natural world in my photography, but I'm also trying to showcase wildlife and natural history. And when you are showcasing natural history, there is an element of accuracy and science and education in that. So you wouldn't want, for example, you know, turning a tiger into a unicorn or something like that. But you know, I respect both schools of photography. They're both art, and each to one's own. It is up to you to decide, you know, through your creative outlets and creative means as to which school of wildlife fine art photography you might want to subscribe to. Next, once you have decided, you know, a line of vision that you want to communicate through your pictures, once you have developed or have decided to develop a particular style of photography, and of course, once you have decided which school of photography you intend to subscribe to, then we come to the more technical side of things. Composition is something that is crucial to good photography, any kind of good photography, even if you do, you know, mundane product photography, even there, composition is important. And composition is something that can really change drastically depending upon where you stand and where you are looking into your viewfinder from. So a lot of times you might have 4 or 5 or 10 different photographers shooting the exact same bird, for example, or the exact same landscape scenery, for example. But you know, one photographer who is among them is consistently producing pictures that are absolutely different and a lot better than what the others are producing right from the same location. It is astounding how different a scene might look by just moving a few feet, you know. For example, when we are on game drives in the national parks and tiger reserves of India, all of us, of course, are confined to a safari jeep. So there is, you know, very limited scope for movement there. We are all in one vehicle, and we can't get down. We can't lie down on the ground. We can't walk away from each other and photograph the subject from a completely different angle. But what we can do is decide whether we want to stand up on the seat of our jeep and shoot the subject, or get down as low as we can inside the jeep, or maybe with you know, the flip out screens and live view viewfinders that our mirrorless cameras have these days, whether we might want to hold our camera outside and hold it really low from our jeep and photograph. And all of that can make a huge difference to the kind of photo that is being produced from within the same jeep. So in situations where you have even more freedom of movement than that, you can really change the way a picture looks by just moving around and you know, changing your position of view and looking at the same frame, the same scene in different frames. So move around, play around with composition, and see where the picture looks best from. Another thing that I always try and tell my guests when we are out photographing is to try and photograph, the scene for not what it looks like alone, but also for what it feels like. For example, here is a beautiful gaur, also called the Indian bison, although that is not an accurate description of the animal. It is not a bison. It is the largest wild cattle in the world. Here is a gaur cow in the grasslands of Kanha National Park on a February morning, misty, very thick mist, cold morning, very muted sort of sunlight, but the sun is just about coming up. So this is, say, a little after dawn, but still not yet morning. And, I could have photographed this picture to be a lot more contrasty. I could have post-processed it to bring out a lot more detail on the animal. In this picture, you barely see more than a silhouette. You can barely make out that the color of the gaur's head is slightly different than that of the rest of its body. You can see the color of its horns. So it is not, an absolute silhouette in that sense, but it is also not, an absolutely clear picture of the animal. If our tendency when we try and post-process pictures, wildlife pictures, is to try and get as much detail out on the animal as we can, and also to get as much contrast out as we can. But if I did that, sure, I would get a clear picture of the animal, but it would completely ruin the feel of the image. You see, the image here represents what I felt like that morning. It was dawn, it was misty, it was cold, and this animal was standing, silhouetted to the naked eye in that mist in the early morning, sunlight, and that is what I tried to capture in this picture. I did not want the trees in the background to look clear, because they did not look clear to my eyes then. It was misty and foggy, and that is how I wanted the picture to turn out to be. So when you're in a scene, when you are watching something, when you're in a forest, watching dappled sunlight filter through the leaves, when you are in any situation, try and communicate as much as you can of what it felt like for you to be communicated, to be visible in the pictures that you produce. When you look at that picture, you should instantly feel, what you felt like while you were present in that moment, in that site. That really is, I think, one of the gold standards of be it landscape photography or wildlife photography. It's really, really challenging to do that. But when you can do that, when you do manage to do that, nothing communicates a picture better than that. Next, you might want to develop the art of being able to pre-visualize your picture. When you're looking at a scene, when you're looking at an animal that you are trying to photograph, don't always look at it through your viewfinder. Don't always look at it through your viewfinder. Don't always look at it from the point of view of, contrasty, clear photography. You could do that if your intent is to produce pictures that could go into a field guide that clearly show the animal for the purposes of identification and things like that. But If you're looking at producing art, if you're looking at producing a fine art wildlife image, put your camera down, look outside your viewfinder, look at the scene, look at the animal, check the light, and see how you can work with what exists. If the animal is in front of a bush and is walking ahead, and you see sunlight filtering out by the bush where it ends, wait for the animal to reach that spot and take a beautiful backlit picture of it. That is what I did with this hog deer in Kaziranga National Park. It was in a grassland with tall grass, tall clumps of grass, and this was in the morning, and the nice low sunlight of winter was there, and it was filtering through the clumps of grass, and I could have taken a picture of the hog deer while it was in front of a clump of grass in the shade and forgotten it. I mean, the hog deer is a very common animal. It's the most common animal, the most common mammal that you'll probably see in Kaziranga. So it's easy to get bored of it and it's easy to ignore it. But you can make stunning pictures of common animals. You don't always have to be photographing the rarest of the rare and just the megafauna and the large carnivores and things like that. Sure, you can do that, but if you play around a little with perspective and light and things like that, you can make some stunning pictures of the most mundane sights of the most common animals. So look out of your camera, look down from your, put your camera down and look out of your viewfinder and look at a scene and try to visualize what you could make it appear as in your picture. Pre-visualize it before you shoot it. Think about the picture before you put your camera to your eye. One thing that really puts off and puts away a lot of photographers, upcoming photographers, photographers who are still learning the ropes. And I personally think that one is always learning the ropes. It's there's no end to it. You can keep learning forever. But one thing that really discourages a lot of photographers is when they post their pictures on some social media website and or just share it with their friends and family or others in a group, and they receive critique that they might or might not have asked for. That really discourages a lot of them. Try not to be discouraged by criticism. Be your own critic. Look at your own pictures again and again. Look at the pictures you see of photographers whose work you like, photographers whose work you follow, and then look at your own pictures again and see what is missing, see what you could do better, and you will definitely learn and improve over time. Don't be discouraged by what others say. Be your own critic, and that will really help you evolve and continuously improve your work. The technology behind photography, like technology of all kinds around us, is really growing at a staggering speed. It's almost difficult to keep up with it. It certainly is difficult to keep up with all the new cameras and lenses that come out. You can't keep having the latest and the greatest all the time in your camera bag. That would be incredibly expensive. But technology is improving and is changing really, really quickly. A lot of us believe that the art of photography does not depend so much on technology. Of course, it's the person behind the camera that is making the pictures, not just the camera, and that is absolutely true. But the rate at which tech is improving, the new tools that are now available to us in the way of what our cameras can do and what the kind of software that we use for processing our pictures can do is amazing. And it is always worthwhile to evolve with the times, to keep up with the technology, and to learn how to use it to um, to improve your pictures. Those of you who use Lightroom, Adobe Lightroom to do your post-processing, if you haven't updated your software, do it now, because Lightroom has introduced some phenomenal new, very exciting new updates. And you can now produce high dynamic range pictures from within Lightroom. You can even add artificial intelligence led optical blur to your pictures, and it looks exactly like real lens blur, the bokeh as we call it. And there are a lot of other new such features that have been launched with it. So that's just one example of how you can keep up with tech. And even your old pictures that you might have taken 10 years ago, and 10 years ago you might have thought of them as very mundane pictures. You could really get a lot out of them today using the kind of technology that is available to improve digital pictures these days, especially with the advent of AI. Things are just they're amazing. A very famous photographer who I'm going to quote again later in the webinar today, David Yarrow. He produces some phenomenal pictures. His pictures are the stuff of, they really define what fine art is. And at the end of the webinar, you can look him up and look at his work. And he said that 99% of the pictures that he produces are absolutely terrible. But that 1%, which is phenomenal, is what he chooses to exhibit to the world. So, as photographers, it is important for us to learn that it is absolutely okay to fail. It is absolutely okay to not get amazing pictures out of every single trip, or not to not get amazing pictures every single day of the trip. If a single trip yields one really good picture, I myself am really happy. As photographers, it is also important for us to be very careful about what pictures we choose to exhibit to the world. We do not want to show, of course, the pictures that are not great. And we want to be very, very choosy as to what we want to exhibit on our portfolio, be it on our website or in print or on social media. Another sort of rule that has been said again and again, and I really believe in it, is to try and get wider and to try and get closer. Of course, you shouldn't be doing that with the tiger cub when the mother is around, not without the guidance of your expedition leader. But that is what I got a chance to do while I was on safari in Ranthambore Tiger Reserve on an India Tiger Quest trip a few years ago. We had a tigress and her cubs feeding right next to our jeep, and one cub was quite close to me. I was shooting with a 70 to 200 millimeter lens, and at one point I was actually so close to the cub that I could zoom out and create this picture from really close. With it makes a hell of a lot of difference if you are shooting with a standard lens or a wide lens or a short telephoto lens from close, or if you're shooting with a really long lens, filling exactly the same amount of the frame, or maybe even more, but from a distance. It makes a big difference in perspective. Um, Telephoto lenses, long telephoto lenses, when shot from a long distance, do not create the kind of engagement, they cannot create the kind of intimacy that, say, a 50 mm or a 100 mm or a 70 mm lens can create from really close, which is why those lenses are used for portraiture. Your camera's perspective really makes a difference, as I was just telling you about on that slide which said learn where to stand. You know, what perspective you show of an animal through your lens can make all the difference between a very mundane picture and an amazing picture. There are three different perspectives with eye level. Eye level is crucial with wildlife photography. And as you know, the eyes of an animal are what really engage us. When we humans are very visual. We look at people. When we talk to people, we look at their eyes. When we look at a picture, we look at an animal's eye. So the eyes are of crucial importance. And what level the viewer's eyes are in relation to that of the animal is also very crucial. When you are at eye level with an animal, you connect with it, in a way that you simply cannot when you're looking down at it from a height. It's just not possible. When you're at eye level, it's like looking, an animal in the face. It is like when you talk to a person, you are at eye level with them and you're looking at their face. It's just like that. So it really creates a great connection when your picture shows an animal at eye level. On the other hand, if you want to uh, show how tiny or small an animal is, or say even if you're photographing a large animal, a large mammal, and want to show how the landscape it lives in completely dwarfs that animal, the best way to do that is to shoot from a height. So you want to look down at it, not figuratively, but literally, uh, to try and show how small the animal is. And of course, if you want to show how imposing a large mammal or any sort of megafauna is, or for that matter, if you want to even show how big or how imposing even a small predator can be, try and photograph it looking up, from below eye level. Nothing sort of establishes that imposing dominance than a perspective from below eye level. This is a picture of an Indo-Chinese roller with flames flying all around it in the grasslands of Kaziranga. The grasslands are burnt every year for the purposes of managing them. And when that happens, all kinds of insects start flying out of them and birds just come in to feast. And I could have taken the picture of this Indo-Chinese roller. It was quite close, and I could have used a long lens to get a really nice close portrait of it. But I chose instead to shoot with a wider focal length and show the flames flying around it. And that brings me to quote David Yarrow, who said famously that people use long lenses. He said this in respect to wildlife photography. He said people use long lenses to be lazy. but that approach cuts out emotion, and that is so absolutely true. He in one of his it was a video interview that I was watching. He said, when you photograph a supermodel, when you're photographing a person, and you want to get a nice portrait of them, you use a 50 lens or a 35 lens or an 85 lens, and you photograph them from um, the same sort of height and distance that you would be talking to them. And you wouldn't take a portrait of a human being with a 500 lens from 100 meters away, would you? Then why would you want to do the same with wildlife? Of course, it's very challenging to take close pictures, portraits of wild animals with short telephoto portrait lenses. But you know, the gist of it is that is what I was telling you a few moments ago, which is to get wider and to get closer as and when as you can, and not by jeopardizing your own safety or the animal's welfare, of course. Um, Finally, after you have taken your pictures, um, keeping all of these things in mind, sit down and post-process. When you're post-processing at home at your digital dark room, continue that vision that you had while taking the picture, and let that sort of sink into your post-processing procedure as well. Post-process your image to communicate the vision you had while taking the picture. Play around with monochrome and black and white and color and saturation, and play around with light. And as I said, the essence of uh, great fine art photography for me is to show what it felt like when you saw that animal rather than what it looked like. And before I start to end this webinar, these are the photographers that I would recommend all of you to study. Ansel Adams, Franz Lenting, and David Yarrow. They do some amazing fine art, wildlife, and landscape work, and it is worth looking at their pictures and studying them and learning from them. And of course, another great way for you to take your photography to the next level is to join us on our Photo Pro expeditions. I, of course, lead the India Tiger Safari Photo Pro expedition, and on those trips we are absolutely focused on amazing photography, learning, sharing, teaching, and finding the best opportunities to photograph tigers and other wildlife in and around the Ranthambore National Park. And with that, I would like to end today's webinar, and I am now going to figure out a way to get in touch with Sunny to see what questions you have for me. All right, we seem to be having, all right, there's one question. When and what determines how you use black and white versus color? Okay, that's a good question. That really depends. I will see what colors exist in a scene. A lot of times you might have a stunning animal in a very in a very non-flattering sort of background. You see, say, for example, with animals like elephants and rhino, animals that have a lot of beautiful texture to them. If you photograph them against a background that is not really, spectacular, that is not really colorful, then you might choose to turn it into black and white and make the animals texture and their natural gray color stand out. I would also do black and white in pictures where I'm trying to make the picture look very moody, where I'm trying to take distractions away and focusing only on drawing the viewer's focus onto the deep shadows and the midtones and the highlights. Sometimes when I've shot a picture in afternoon light, which is the kind of light which doesn't really flatter your subject, then also I will choose to do black and white. So it really depends. It's very, very, when you look at a picture, sometimes when you're sitting and post-processing, you can just feel that this might look much better in black and white, and then you try, and then if it looks good, you just keep it in black and white. The next question is, can novices go on NatHab's Photo Pro trips? Yes, of course. Novices can go on NatHab's Photo Pro trips. These are amazing opportunities for you to learn and improve your art and to become, much more evolved photographers at the end of the trip. These are amazing learning opportunities. How close can you get to land animals to take a fairly good photo with a cell phone? Well, that's a good question. It depends. While I'm tempted to say that you can never get close enough, of course, keeping one's own safety in mind and the animal's welfare in mind, one should only say that sort of thing in jest. But if you have large mammals and they are, say, within 50 or 100 yards, you can take great pictures of them in their landscape. If they are closer, then you can even take frame filling pictures of them. Another question is, am I available on LinkedIn to connect with? I am available on LinkedIn, although I'm not very active there, but yeah, feel free to connect with me there. There is a request to show the black and white pictures again, and here is one of them. This was a tiger that I had photographed in Ranthambore Tiger Reserve, using a vintage lens, 200 millimeter f4 manual focus lens from the 1980s, and I really wanted the vintage feel of that picture to come across, of that lens to come across in the picture. So that was then my reason to use black and white on this picture. Here is another black and white picture, and we are actually running out of time. I would unfortunately have to let that be our last question today. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for listening to this webinar. Apologies again for the technical glitch, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow for your next episode of Daily Dose of Nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at www.nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody.